The courtroom was silent, except for the sound of papers shuffling. Judge Harrison adjusted his glasses and glanced down at the documents before him. Asterisk across the aisle sat Margaret Hayes, her silver hair pulled neatly into a bun, her frail frame wrapped in a pale blue cardigan. To anyone looking from the outside, she seemed like nothing more than a tired old widow, gentle, fragile, almost breakable. Asterisk, but the moment the judge's eyes met hers, he froze. Something in Margaret's gaze told a different story. There was a quiet strength there, a glimmer of authority that didn't belong to someone on the verge of being declared incompetent. Asterisk for now. The court didn't know who she really was. But soon, they would. Asterisk only a few months earlier, Margaret had been living a quiet life in her Cambridge home. The same house she and her late husband, Richard, had bought nearly 40 years ago. Asterisk, the house was modest but warm. Its white clapboard siding had weathered countless Boston winters. The porch creaked with familiarity. Every photograph on the wall told a story of birthdays, anniversaries, Christmas mornings filled with laughter. Asterisk to Margaret, this home wasn't just a building. It was her last tangible connection to Richard. Asterisk. But her daughter, Sophia, and Sophia's husband, Daniel, saw something else. Asterisk to them, it was prime real estate. A property worth millions in a market where demand was sky high. And in their eyes, Margaret was simply too old to maintain it. Asterisk. Mom, you can't live like this anymore, Sophia said one afternoon, sitting stiffly at the kitchen table. Her eyes betrayed hesitation. But Daniel's hand resting firmly over hers urged her forward. Asterisk. You need care, Margaret, Daniel added smoothly. His tone carried the fake sweetness of someone trying too hard. Rosewood Gardens has everything. Doctors, nurses, companionship. You won't have to worry about anything. Asterisk. Margaret sipped her tea slowly, her eyes narrowing. She had been a school teacher once, sharp and quick to detect dishonesty. And she could read Daniel like a book. Asterisk. This house has everything I need, she said firmly. And I don't intend to leave it. Asterisk. Daniel's smile faltered, but only for a moment. We'll see about that, he muttered under his breath. Asterisk. Weeks later, Margaret received a letter that shook her to the core. Asterisk. It was a petition for guardianship, filed by Daniel and Sophia, claiming she was no longer mentally capable of managing her affairs. Asterisk. The papers alleged forgetfulness, confusion, inability to handle bills. Lies, all of it. Asterisk. She clutched the envelope in trembling hands, her breath shallow. Her own daughter had signed it. Asterisk. That night, she sat alone in Richard's old study. The grandfather clock ticked steadily, the sound echoing in the hollow silence of the house. Asterisk. I wish you were here. Richard, she whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. I don't know how to fight them. Asterisk. But Richard, though gone, had left her more than memories. Asterisk. As Margaret ran her fingers across the mahogany desk, her nails caught on something unusual. A faint line along the inside of the bottom drawer. Curiosity stirred. Asterisk. She tugged gently, and to her surprise, the wooden panel lifted. Asterisk. Inside lay a worn leather folder. Asterisk. With trembling hands, she opened it. And what she saw made her breath hitch. Asterisk. Property deeds, bank statements, investment portfolios. A web of accounts and businesses that Margaret had never known about. Asterisk. At the very bottom, a sealed letter with her name on it. Asterisk. She unfolded the paper slowly, and Richard's familiar handwriting leapt off the page. Asterisk. My dearest Margaret. Asterisk. If you are reading this, I am no longer by your side. Forgive me for keeping secrets, but I knew your heart too well. You would have given everything away to others, working yourself into the ground. Asterisk. I built this empire quietly, not for me, but for you. For us. Asterisk. But I feared Daniel. I never trusted him. He is reckless, and he will drag Sophia down with him. If ever he tries to take what is yours, remember this: you are stronger than you believe. You have the power now. Use it wisely. Protect yourself. Protect our legacy. Asterisk. Always. Asterisk. Richard. Asterisk. Margaret's tears blurred the ink. For the first time since his death, she felt Richard's presence again, not as a ghost, but as a guardian who had planned every move long before she knew she needed it. Asterisk. Among the documents was the deed to a luxury apartment building in downtown Boston. Margaret's eyes widened when she recognized the address. Asterisk. It was the very building where Sophia and Daniel lived. Asterisk, her lips curved into a faint, almost disbelieving smile. The man trying to evict her from her own home was living in an apartment she owned. Asterisk, but there was more. Asterisk, Richard had entrusted his longtime financial advisor, Carolyn Foster, with the details. Margaret wasted no time. The next morning, she called Caroline's office. Asterisk, Mrs. Hayes. Caroline greeted warmly, ushering her inside. I've been waiting for this day. Asterisk, over coffee, Caroline explained everything. The trust, the properties, the safeguards Richard had built into his estate. Asterisk, but her expression darkened when she mentioned Daniel. Asterisk, he's in debt. Margaret. Gambling, failed ventures, shady partnerships. He's desperate. I believe this guardianship petition is his way of gaining access to your assets. Asterisk, Margaret's heart clenched. Sophia didn't know. Her daughter was caught in Daniel's trap, blind to his deceit. Asterisk, but Margaret would not let Richard's fears come true. Asterisk, that evening, Sophia and Daniel stormed into Margaret's house, their faces tight with frustration. Asterisk, you forced our hand. Mom, Sophia said, her voice trembling. The hearing is set. The court will decide what's best for you. Asterisk, Daniel leaned against the doorway, smug as ever. It's only a matter of time before this house is sold and you're someplace safe. Frankly, it's for your own good. Asterisk, Margaret rose slowly from her chair. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel frail. She felt powerful. Asterisk, funny, she said softly, her eyes locked on Daniel. You speak of safety, but tell me, how safe do you feel living in an apartment that isn't even yours? Asterisk, Daniel blinked. What are you talking about? Asterisk, I own that building, Margaret said, her voice steady. Every brick, every lease, including yours. Asterisk, Sophia's eyes widened. She turned sharply to her husband. Daniel, is that true? Asterisk, Daniel stammered, but Margaret didn't wait for his answer. Asterisk, you see, Richard left me far more than you realized. He saw you for what you are, Daniel. A parasite. And soon Sophia will too. Asterisk, the color drained from Daniel's face. For the first time, the control was slipping from his hands. Asterisk, and Margaret wasn't finished yet. The days leading up to the hearing were heavy with silence. Margaret's once peaceful home now felt like enemy territory. She moved quietly through the rooms, aware that Sophia and Daniel could appear at any moment, pressing her to surrender. Asterisk, but Margaret was no longer the woman they thought she was. She wasn't broken. She wasn't helpless. Asterisk, she was armed. Asterisk, every evening she sat at her kitchen table. Documents spread before her, reviewing Richard's trust, the deeds, and Caroline's notes. The evidence was clear. Daniel's manipulation ran deep. Asterisk, Sophia visited once alone, her eyes swollen from tears. Asterisk, Mom, she whispered, why are you making this so hard? I just want you safe. Asterisk, Margaret reached for her daughter's hand. Sophia, I know you think this is for me. But it isn't. This is Daniel's plan. He's not who you think he is. Asterisk, Sophia flinched, pulling her hand away. Don't do this. He's my husband. Asterisk, Margaret's heart broke. Sophia wasn't ready to see the truth, not yet. But soon she would. Asterisk, 2 nights before the hearing. Margaret sat across from Carolyn Foster again in the quiet Boston office. The city lights glittered behind them, casting long shadows across the mahogany desk. Asterisk. Margaret, I have to prepare you, Carolyn said gently. Daniel will fight dirty. He'll paint you as unstable, forgetful, vulnerable. He's even submitted false medical reports claiming you're unfit. Asterisk, Margaret tightened her grip on her teacup. And the court will believe him? Asterisk, Carolyn shook her head. Not if we present the truth. I've gathered records of Daniel's debts, the casinos, the failed businesses, and most importantly, I've uncovered documents where he forged Sophia's signature on your guardianship petition. He didn't even trust her enough to ask. Asterisk, Margaret's breath caught. He forged my daughter's name? Asterisk, Carolyn nodded grimly. Yes, and when Sophia learns the truth, she have a choice to make. Between you and him. Asterisk Margaret's chest ached. She had always dreamed of protecting Sophia, not tearing her world apart. But Richard's words echoed in her mind. Protect yourself. Protect our family. Asterisk the choice wasn't hers anymore. Asterisk the day of the hearing arrived. Asterisk Margaret entered the courthouse wearing a navy dress and pearl earrings Richard had given her on their 30th anniversary. She walked slowly but with dignity, every step deliberate. Asterisk Sophia and Daniel were already seated at the petitioner's table. Sophia looked pale, conflicted. Daniel, however, was radiating confidence, his expensive suit pressed, his smirk firmly in place. Asterisk the courtroom buzzed with whispers. Family disputes were always messy, but this case, an elderly widow, her only daughter, and a greedy son-in-law had already drawn attention. Asterisk when Judge Harrison entered, the room fell silent. His sharp eyes scanned the room before settling briefly on Margaret. That was when he froze. Just for a moment. Something about her presence unsettled him. Asterisk, but he cleared his throat, adjusted his glasses, and began the proceedings. Asterisk Daniel rose first. His voice polished, rehearsed. Asterisk. Your Honor, we're here today because Mrs. Hayes is no longer capable of caring for herself or her estate. My wife and I have watched her decline, her memory lapses, her confusion, her inability to maintain her property. It's heartbreaking, but she needs professional care. Asterisk, he spoke with such conviction that heads nodded in the gallery. Sophia sat beside him, her hands folded tightly, avoiding her mother's gaze. Asterisk Daniel slid a stack of papers across the table. Here are the medical evaluations, the bills she's forgotten to pay, the reports of her neglecting household safety. We're only doing what's best for her. Asterisk, he placed a comforting hand on Sophia's shoulder, like a husband protecting his wife. But Margaret knew it was all theater. Asterisk. When it was her turn, Margaret stood slowly, gripping the table for balance. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Asterisk, Your Honor, she began, her voice soft but steady. I may be old, but I am not incompetent. I pay my bills. I cook my meals. I walk my garden every morning. What I do forget sometimes is that people I love can be turned against me. Asterisk, a murmur rippled through the room. Asterisk Judge Harrison leaned forward, his eyes fixed on her. Mrs. Hayes, do you have evidence to support your claim of competency? Asterisk Margaret nodded. Yes, but first, I have evidence of something far more important. Evidence of deception. Asterisk Carolyn, seated behind Margaret, rose and handed her a folder. Margaret slid it across to the judge. Asterisk, these are financial records. Your Honor, not mine, Daniel's. Asterisk Daniel stiffened. His smirk faltered. Asterisk the judge flipped through the pages, his brows furrowing. Casino debts, bankruptcies, business failures. All in Daniel's name. Asterisk Margaret's voice grew stronger. This man who claims to want what's best for me is drowning in debt. He doesn't want to protect me. He wants access to my estate. Asterisk Sophia gasped, turning toward her husband. Daniel, is this true? Asterisk Daniel's jaw clenched. She's lying. Those aren't mine. Asterisk, but his eyes betrayed him. Asterisk Margaret wasn't done. She pulled another document from her folder, her hand trembling slightly, but her eyes blazing with determination. Asterisk, this petition you filed. It bears my daughter's signature. But it isn't hers. Asterisk gasps echoed. Sophia leaned forward, confusion etched across her face. Asterisk Caroline stepped forward. Your Honor, we've had the signature analyzed by a handwriting expert. It was forged. By Daniel. Asterisk Sophia's face drained of color. You forged my name? Her voice cracked, betrayal laced in every syllable. Asterisk Daniel reached for her hand, but she pulled away sharply. Sophia, listen to me. Asterisk, don't touch me. She hissed, her eyes brimming with tears. Asterisk, the courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Harrison pounded his gavel. Order! Asterisk, but the damage was done. Daniel's mask was slipping. Asterisk Judge Harrison turned back to Margaret. Mrs. Hayes, you've raised serious questions. But why didn't you bring this forward sooner? Why now? Asterisk Margaret drew a deep breath. This was the moment Richard had prepared her for. Asterisk, she lifted another set of documents. Because until recently, I didn't know the full truth myself. My late husband, Richard Hayes, left behind an estate far greater than anyone realized. Investments, trusts, properties. Asterisk Daniel's head snapped toward her, panic flashing in his eyes. Asterisk, one of those properties, Margaret continued, is the very building where my daughter and Daniel live. I own it, every unit, including theirs. Asterisk, the gallery erupted. Asterisk, Sophia's hand flew to her mouth. She turned to Daniel, searching for answers, but he looked cornered like a predator finally trapped. Asterisk, Judge Harrison raised an eyebrow, visibly shaken. Mrs. Hayes, are you saying you are the landlord of the petitioner? Asterisk, yes, Your Honor, Margaret replied, her voice steady. And I have every right under the law to decide who stays in my building and who does not. Asterisk, the room fell silent. Asterisk, even the judge seemed momentarily frozen, the weight of the revelation hanging heavy in the air. The silence in the courtroom was suffocating. Daniel's face, usually smug and controlled, now glistened with sweat. His carefully constructed image was crumbling, and everyone could see it. Asterisk, he stood abruptly, his chair screeching across the floor. Asterisk, Your Honor, this is absurd! He barked, his voice shaking more than he intended. She's confused. She's making wild claims, grasping at straws to avoid facing reality. She's delusional. Asterisk, Judge Harrison eyed him carefully, then turned back to Margaret. Asterisk, double quotes, Mrs. Hayes, can you prove ownership of this property? Asterisk, Margaret, calm as ever, gestured to Carolyn. The advisor stepped forward and handed over certified copies of the deeds, along with trust documents bearing Richard Hayes's signature and seals. Asterisk, the judge examined them closely, his lips pressed into a thin line. Finally, he looked at Daniel. Asterisk, these appear legitimate. Do you have evidence to the contrary, Mr. Miller? Asterisk, Daniel stammered. I don't... His voice faltered, his shoulders sagging. He had no ammunition left. Asterisk, Sophia sat frozen, her mind a whirlwind of betrayal and confusion. Asterisk, she turned to her husband, her eyes searching his. You knew her wealth. That's why you pushed so hard. Why didn't you tell me? Asterisk, Daniel tried to reach for her hand again. Sophia, listen, asterisk. No. She snapped, jerking away. Her voice rose, trembling with anger. You forged my name. You lied to me. You used me against my own mother. Asterisk, tears welled in her eyes as she turned toward Margaret. Mom, I'm so sorry. I thought, asterisk, Margaret shook her head gently. You don't need to apologize, Sophia. You loved him. You trusted him. I understand. But now you see the truth. Asterisk, Sophia's tears spilled over. She had been blind for so long, defending Daniel against every whisper, every suspicion. And now it was laid bare for the world to see. Asterisk, Daniel wasn't finished yet. Desperation drove him to recklessness. Asterisk, Your Honor, he said, his voice sharp. Even if she owns that property, it proves nothing about her competency. Wealth doesn't mean she's capable of managing it. She still forgets things. She still struggles. Asterisk, he glanced at the gallery, trying to rally support. She's an old woman clinging to the past. You can't let sentiment cloud your judgment. She needs care. Asterisk, but the cracks in his voice betrayed him. He was no longer convincing anyone, not even himself. Asterisk, Judge Harrison raised a hand to silence him. Enough, Mr. Miller. This court is not here to debate sentiment. We are here to assess facts. Asterisk, Margaret rose again, her hands steady despite the storm around her. She held a small, sealed envelope. Asterisk, this, she said softly, is the last letter my husband wrote to me. It was found with the documents that revealed his estate. I believe it is relevant. Asterisk, she handed it to the bailiff, who delivered it to the judge. Asterisk, Judge Harrison unfolded the paper, his brow furrowing as he read. His eyes scanned Richard's carefully written words, and for the first time that day, his stern expression softened. Asterisk, he looked back at Margaret, then at Daniel. Asterisk, this letter, he began, makes clear Mr. Hayes's intent. He anticipated precisely this scenario. He stated explicitly that he distrusted you, Mr. Miller, that he feared you would manipulate his daughter and attempt to control his wife. He established this trust to ensure Mrs. Hayes could protect herself from exploitation. Asterisk. Gasps rippled through the room. Asterisk. Sophia covered her mouth, her body shaking with sobs. The truth was undeniable. Her father had seen it coming all along. Asterisk. Daniel's face went pale, as though the very ground had been pulled from under him. Asterisk. Judge Harrison placed the letter on the bench and sat back, studying Margaret. Asterisk. The courtroom was silent, all eyes fixed on the frail-looking widow who had just dismantled her accuser piece by piece. Asterisk. Finally, the judge spoke, his voice measured. Asterisk. Mrs. Hayes, you are not only competent, you are more prepared, more in control of your affairs than many half your age. This court owes you an apology for the distress these proceedings have caused. Asterisk. He turned toward Daniel, his gaze sharp as ice. As for you, Mr. Miller, forging signatures, attempting to defraud this court, and exploiting your wife and mother-in-law, these are serious matters. I am referring your actions to the district attorney's office for review. Asterisk. Daniel's knees buckled. He sank into his chair, defeated. Asterisk. The judge paused then, his eyes returning to Margaret. For a moment, he seemed frozen, as though realizing the depth of what had just unfolded. Asterisk. The old woman before him wasn't a victim. She was the quiet architect of justice. The courtroom wasn't just witnessing a legal victory. It was witnessing a revelation. Asterisk. After the gavel fell, Sophia sat trembling, staring at the man she had once called her husband. Asterisk. Daniel reached for her again, his voice hoarse. Sophia, please. You know I was only trying to secure our future. Don't let her turn you against me. Asterisk. But Sophia stood, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Her eyes, red and swollen, locked on him with fury. Asterisk. You turned me against her, she spat. You lied. You stole. You used me. I don't even know who you are anymore. Asterisk. She turned away, walking toward Margaret. Her mother opened her arms, and for the first time in months, Sophia collapsed against her, sobbing. Asterisk. Margaret held her tightly, whispering softly, It's over now, my darling. It's over. Asterisk. The crowd spilled into the marble hallway, buzzing with conversation. Reporters whispered about the widow who had bested her greedy son-in-law. Lawyers exchanged glances of respect. Asterisk. Margaret walked slowly, Sophia clinging to her arm. Carolyn followed close behind, her expression one of quiet triumph. Asterisk. Double quotes. Mrs. Hayes, Carolyn said softly. You did it. Richard would be proud. Asterisk. Margaret smiled faintly. I didn't do it alone. Richard guided me. And you helped me find the courage I thought I'd lost. Asterisk. Sophia squeezed her mother's hand. And I'll never doubt you again, Mom. Never. Asterisk. Margaret looked at her daughter, her heart swelling with love. The battle had been painful, but it had also given her back what mattered most, her daughter's trust. Asterisk. As they stepped outside, Daniel was being led away by officers for questioning. His once pristine suit now hung on him like a costume stripped of its power. Asterisk. He caught Margaret's gaze, his eyes filled with hatred and fear. Asterisk. But Margaret didn't flinch. She had lived long enough to know that men like Daniel destroyed themselves eventually. He had played his hand and he had lost. Asterisk. That evening, back in her home, Margaret sat by the fireplace with Sophia beside her. The house felt warmer, safer, as though Richard himself was there, watching over them. Asterisk. Sophia wiped her tears and managed a smile. Mom, what are you going to do now? With everything Dad left you? Asterisk. Margaret stared into the flames, her eyes thoughtful. Richard didn't give me this power to spend it recklessly. He wanted me to live, to protect our family. That's what I'll do. I'll make sure you're safe, Sophia. That no one can ever use you like Daniel did. Asterisk. Sophia leaned against her shoulder. I love you, Mom. Asterisk. Margaret kissed her hair gently. I love you too, darling. More than anything. Asterisk. And for the first time in a long time, Margaret Hayes felt at peace. Asterisk. But deep down, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't just the end of a courtroom battle. Asterisk. It was the beginning of a new chapter. One where she was no longer underestimated. Asterisk. One where she would use her strength and Richard's legacy to shape the future. The days following the courtroom showdown were a blur of headlines, whispers, and investigations. Asterisk greedy son-in-law exposed in court. Splashed across the front page of the local newspaper. The story spread quickly, the tale of an aging widow who had stood tall against betrayal, armed with nothing but her late husband's foresight and her own courage. Asterisk Daniel, once respected in certain business circles, found himself shunned. His reputation was in tatters. The district attorney's office pursued charges of forgery, fraud, and attempted exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Asterisk each new allegation tightened the noose around him. Associates distanced themselves. His business deals collapsed. Creditors came knocking, eager to collect from a man whose empire was built on lies. Asterisk and Daniel, the man who had once strutted into court full of arrogance, now sat in a stark interrogation room, his hands trembling as officers catalogued every document, every forged signature, every betrayal. Asterisk Sophia carried shame heavy in her chest. She replayed her own words in court, the accusations she had hurled at her mother, the blind loyalty she had given to Daniel. Asterisk, but Margaret never once held it against her. Asterisk one evening, as autumn leaves scattered across the yard, Sophia sat with her mother at the kitchen table. A mug of tea warmed her hands as tears blurred her vision. Asterisk. I don't know how to forgive myself, Mom, she whispered. I chose him over you. I doubted you. I let him turn me against my own family. Asterisk Margaret reached across the table, her hand gentle on Sophia's. Asterisk. My darling girl, she said softly, forgiveness isn't something you need to earn from me. You were deceived by someone you trusted. That isn't your shame, it's his. What matters is that you see the truth now. Asterisk Sophia's lip trembled. I want to be better. I want to be like you, strong, unshakable. Asterisk Margaret smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. Strength doesn't mean never bending. It means standing up again after the storm. And you, Sophia, are already stronger than you think. Asterisk for the first time in months. Sophia allowed herself to believe it. Asterisk with Richard's hidden fortune revealed. Margaret's life changed in ways she could never have imagined. Asterisk no longer did she worry about bills or the crumbling roof. The estate provided not just comfort, but security. Yet Margaret knew that money itself wasn't the victory. Asterisk, the real triumph was freedom. Freedom from Daniel's shadow. From doubt, from the belief that she was weak or incompetent. Asterisk, she poured her newfound strength into her community. She funded scholarships in Richard's name, restored the town library where she and Richard had once read to Sophia as a child, and even established a foundation to protect seniors from financial exploitation, inspired by her own ordeal. Asterisk. The town began to look at Margaret not just as the widow of Richard Hayes, but as a formidable woman in her own right. A matriarch. A protector. Asterisk months later, the courthouse once again became the stage. But this time, Margaret was only a spectator. Asterisk Daniel stood trial for his crimes, his once polished exterior stripped away. Witnesses testified about his manipulations. Experts dissected the forged documents. Sophia herself took the stand, her voice steady, recounting how he had pressured her into doubting her mother. Asterisk Margaret sat in the gallery, her hands folded calmly in her lap. She watched without gloating, without malice. She didn't need revenge. She only wanted justice. Asterisk, when the verdict came guilty on all counts, Daniel's shoulders sagged. He was led away in handcuffs, a man destroyed by his own greed. Asterisk Sophia wept quietly beside her mother, a mix of sorrow and relief in her heart. Margaret placed an arm around her and whispered, "It's over now, darling." Truly over. Asterisk after the trial. Judge Harrison requested a private word with Margaret. Asterisk in his chambers, he studied her carefully, as though still trying to reconcile the frail woman who had first entered his court with the unyielding force he had come to respect. Asterisk. Mrs. Hayes, he said finally, I want you to know something. That day in court, when you stood with your husband's letter, I froze. Asterisk Margaret tilted her head slightly. Curious. Asterisk. I have presided over countless cases, the judge continued. But in that moment, I saw something rare. You weren't just defending yourself. You were carrying the weight of your husband's foresight, your daughter's trust, and your own dignity. It was humbling. It reminded me why justice exists in the first place. Margaret's lips curved into a faint smile. I only did what Richard prepared me to do, Your Honor, and what my heart told me was right. The judge nodded, his eyes heavy with respect. And that, Mrs. Hayes, is what makes you extraordinary. With Daniel gone, Sophia began the slow process of rebuilding her life. She attended counseling, reconnected with friends she had abandoned, and most importantly, worked side by side with her mother. Together they expanded the foundation. Sophia took on the role of coordinator, traveling to speak at events about the warning signs of financial abuse. She used her own painful story as testimony, ensuring others wouldn't fall victim to the same traps. Each time she spoke, Margaret sat proudly in the audience, her heart swelling with love for the daughter who had once been lost, but was now stronger than ever. Years passed. Margaret's hair grew whiter, her steps slower, but her spirit remained unbroken. On the anniversary of Richard's death, she and Sophia visited his grave. The wind rustled gently through the trees as Margaret laid a hand on the cool stone. Richard, she whispered. You were right. He tried to take everything from us. But because of you, we were ready. Because of you, I found the courage to fight. And now Sophia is free. She's safe. Sophia knelt beside her mother, tears shining in her eyes. Dad, I promise I'll honor what you built. I'll protect Mom, just like you wanted. They stood together in the quiet cemetery, a family scarred by betrayal but bound by resilience. And so, the story of Margaret Hayes became more than just a courtroom battle. It became a testament to the power of foresight, to the resilience of love, and to the unshakable strength of a woman underestimated by everyone but her late husband. Daniel Miller's name faded into infamy, a cautionary tale of greed that consumed itself. Sophia found redemption, her voice becoming a beacon for others who had been blinded by trust. And Margaret? She lived not as a victim of age or circumstance, but as a quiet warrior, a reminder that true power often resides in those the world dismisses. The day the judge froze in that courtroom wasn't just about legal victory. It was the moment everyone realized something undeniable. You cannot strip dignity from those who refuse to surrender it. If you were shocked by this story, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who loves dramatic true story moments, and subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories every week. And don't forget to tap the bell icon so you'll never miss a moment of suspense, betrayal, and triumph.